Let's talk about what Americans believe by way of some of this polling. The CNN polling finding this week that 45%, surveyed believe the president should be impeached and removed from office. And one has to wonder whether new information concerning emails involving Michael Duffy at the OMB revealing that aid was withheld for a period of time and then suddenly released as it became public that there was a whistleblower complaint. Do you believe that in any way changes or galvanizes Democrats to press on hearing witnesses before a U.S. Senate trial?
I don't think the facts are even in dispute here, whether or not money was withheld. There are multiple times where people in the Trump White House have said that that was the case. The only issue is whether the Republicans think this is serious enough. And I do think that the only reason that impeachment will have some impact next year is if Americans don't believe that the Republicans in the Senate have taken a look at the facts seriously. And so other than that, I think that mostly voters are baked in on this. They think that Donald Trump did something wrong. They overwhelmingly say that, but they're not sure whether he should be removed from office for it. And that's a different issue. So I think what we have next year is the same issue we have this year, which is a multitude of ways where Donald Trump has failed the American people, has lied to the American people, and voters are going to be able to weigh that, if not in an impeachment trial in the Senate, then at the ballot box in November.
So Jim,
I'll tell you what, I run on jobs, the economy, and all the successes. So you could talk about failures and all the other things. They're just not there. And I don't think, the American people, we should be taking this to the American people. And we shouldn't be doing this political sideshow that we're calling impeachment.
That there was a quid pro quo. You had the president who invited China to look into his political opponent. So what portion are you saying is not there? Because that really is what the impeachment is about, Jim.
So no, what the impeachment is about is two things. Obstruction of Congress, which isn't there and hasn't been there because they didn't avail themselves of the ability to go through the court system.
But doesn't the White House admit that it withheld evidence?
Is that what we're talking about here?
Well, wait a minute, Jim.
What are the facts
that lead to abuse of power? The White House has admitted that it has withheld evidence and has not allowed people to present their testimony.
You're abusing power right now on air.
Stop
filibustering her. Go ahead, Fred. Ask the question.
Well, I mean, it's the same question, Jim. It is on the issue of obstruction of Congress. The White House has not denied not withholding witnesses and evidence. The White House has, kept people from testifying, right?
Correct.
And isn't that one of the articles?
Lawfully, because they had a colorable claim to not have the witnesses testify, and therefore it goes to the courts. Congress,
if they had nothing to hide, they would let them
testify.
If they had nothing to hide, they'd let them testify.
Congress does not have the last word on that.
Let's go. Well, actually, a separation of powers. Congress does have the right to have this word. So
they don't have the last word.
Let's talk about where
there's a third branch. I'm not sure if you know about that or not. It's called the court system.
Yeah, well, you only have to fight your way in court if you have something to hide from the Congress. Otherwise,
really?
Is that
right? Anybody who goes to court has something to hide in this country?
That's indeed what the administration is doing.
Members of Congress perhaps are considering thinking about the next step, which is a U.S. Senate trial. Why are you even arguing
things that President Trump doesn't argue? I don't even get that. That's what's happened here, is that Republicans have started being so talking point loyal to the president that they're even going farther than the president does. He says, yes, I did it, but there was nothing wrong with it. And everybody here is saying he didn't do anything.
Legal process arguments here that makes sense.
Because the legal process argument is really not, it's not a point here. It's not. It's actually not a point.
Oh, it's not. It's just not because you say it isn't. I get it. That's a wise argument.
Because this is a legal process. There's no argument against it.
Do we believe there will be a Senate trial?
There is a legal process, and they didn't follow it.
Does anyone hear me? So, Jim, do we believe there's going to be a Senate trial?
I do believe there's going to be a Senate trial.
Under
and I
what
do believe that Nancy Pelosi has hurt the Democratic Party by holding the thing up. And look, when they wanted to put their process forward, they weren't asking for input from the other side in the House. They did whatever they wanted to do. They held it in the basement. They started out in Adler's committee. That was an absolute disaster. Then they held depositions in the basement where they didn't allow questions to be from the White House counsel's office. And then to make up for all of that, they said, okay, we're going to hold a public hearing and invite the White House now after the cake is already baked. I've said that time and time again.
It's not even true. Nothing you just said is true. But let's talk about Nancy Pelosi quickly, Fred, before we leave, which is that actually Congress went into recess. So Nancy Pelosi is not delaying a single thing in the Senate. Nothing was going to happen until January anyway. The other thing that Nancy Pelosi did this year that is they passed a legislation to lower prescription drugs. They passed legislation to require universal background checks. They passed legislation for Violence Against Women Act. All legislation that is overwhelmingly supported by the American people, a minimum wage increase, supported by the American people, all dying in the Republican Senate. That's what Democrats are going to run on. That's what's going to hurt Donald Trump next year. And that's where Nancy Pelosi, I think, is going to prove to be successful here.
All right.
Whether or not the Senate buries the impeachment rules or not.
All right, we'll leave it there for now. Hillary Rosen, Jim Schultz, good to see you all. Happy holidays.